Let's do this. World of Warcraft is not a first-person shooter. It's not even a third-person shooter. It's not a shooter at all. It's actually an MMORPG with very minimal RPG elements in it, but that's another story entirely. And yet, I feel that there is a need for a long-range shooting class within World of Warcraft. Now, in order to really understand where I'm coming from, we gotta talk about the big, overarching storyline of World of Warcraft. The 900-pound elephant in the room, if you will. The entire fucking planet is at war. The whole concept of Warcraft, ever since the beginning, has always been a base storyline of Horde versus Alliance. Both sides are deadlocked in a conflict that seems to have no end in sight, and for that matter, they don't seem to want an end to it either. I say this because if it was unrestricted warfare, the Alliance wouldn't stand a chance. How can I say that? Well, let's take a look at what the ex-leader of the Horde has been up to since Cataclysm.
Join me.
Oh yeah, he's been holding the known world together. And how about King Rin? Yeah, the Alliance is toast. So the grand story takes a backseat to game mechanics and balance. That's fine. It's stupid, but fine. On paper, the concept is that all classes should be the same with advantages and weaknesses, but in reality, we all know this is just not the case. And you may think it's a matter of semantics, but when you use those terms, advantage and weakness, it's very telling of the mindset of the players and developers. In the case of the Hunter class, the weakness is supposed to be the dead zone, that melee range in which the weapon is ripped out of their hands, but the advantage is supposed to be range. The language here implies that the distance of engagement makes a big difference, but the reality is it just does not. In the last show I put together some numbers of distance, but the most telling is the speed that someone can run in WoW. A toon can cross a 40-yard gap in about 6.2 seconds, so that means that the advantage that a hunter has is gone in 6 seconds. In that time, a hunter can shoot his gun twice on auto shot, possibly use 2 abilities, and that's just not enough to make any kind of meaningful difference. Put down the keyboard. I heard you guys the first 5 times when you were talking about this. All you need to do is this. Just slow them down. Just do this kind of technique. Just do this, that, or the other thing. And I tried all your advice. I actually did. And I would like to see you guys actually performing this on a real keyboard, because either you suck at teaching or I'm too dense to get it, because I just don't see any way that it actually works, because my hands cannot consistently contort the way you guys are trying to convince me they should. There's a reason I've been keeping this next to the keyboard. It's because of you guys. What I'm saying is that the advantage of ranked class is not really an advantage. 40 yards in this game is a complete joke, and again, the language that you use is that it's an advantage, and I call bullshit. Complete, unadulterated bullshit. The only way that range becomes an advantage is if that range is actually useful, or if I can truly put the hurt on someone before they can cross that distance. And in the period of 6 to 10 seconds that it takes to clear that gap, it just can't be done. Even the most twinked out hunter can't produce sufficient damage to down a target from 40 yards to point blank. I probably lost some people on that. You see, a twink is a slang term for a low-level character, usually being fed gear by a high-level character, so that that low-level character can completely pwn and dominate in PvP and arena battles at their current level. Although related to that, twink is also a derogatory term used to describe a young-looking gay male who's looking for a sugar daddy to leech off of. I'm just saying. Assuming that range is supposed to be my big advantage, then give me enough space to make it really advantageous. And I can already hear people saying that it's just not fair if someone can't defend themselves at range. Well, it's not fair if I can't defend myself at point blank, so there you go. And I still maintain that they should be able to make a one-shot, one-kill weapon, but again, I can see that this is just not unrestricted warfare. If it were, I would want this. What you're looking at is the weapon of a modern sniper, 50 caliber round capable of hitting targets over a mile away. No fucking around with this weapon. It doesn't just put holes in people, it erases people off the planet. It puts holes in armored tanks, for Christ's sake. It's also a huge freaking gun designed to take the pressures of launching said round at high velocity. I don't feel unjustified asking for one-shot, one-kills when you're talking about systems like this that actually do exist. But I also understand the problem comes in game mechanics, the mathematics you guys are yelling at me to do. And in WoW specifically, the game mechanic in question is resilience. PvP armor has a score on it for resilience. This is a somehow magical property of the armor that simply ignores a percentage of damage done by enemy players, pets, and minions. So if you have a full set of the gladiator armor, it basically means that 40% of all damage done to you is just ignored. Thing is, I cannot find a good reason given by Blizzard as to why this stat actually still exists. Players have their opinions, sure, but Blizzard has been curiously quiet on the topic. Unless they've hidden the post, which is always an option with them. The most I can find is that in Burning Crusade it was used to reduce damage from critical strikes as a reward for high-level characters. Now, according to what I've also found, armor takes another percentage off of that modified number from resilience, so, using my hunter as an example and rounding the numbers for simplicity, I get hit with 100 points of damage, so 40 points off the top, that's 60 points that punches through. The armor now takes another 40% off of that, so in reality 36 points of damage actually punches through, and for the sake of argument I'm not going to count magical resistances or buffs into this. So you can imagine what this leads to in a PvP environment. When your average character can ignore 64% or more of the damage dealt with them, you get idiot fights. Two guys running in circles, dinging each other with single hits, trying to get one-shot damage on the other guy and just rely on having better gear. There's no skill here, it's just numbers and stuns, and the reality is it's just whoever brings more numbers to the table wins. Bodies, gear score, it doesn't matter. More numbers wins over skills and tactics any day of the week. Or to put this simply, let's say I want to one-shot kill a high-level but still pretty weak toon, let's say 30% armor and resilience. So they're probably going to have about 150k worth of hits, being generous. So to make 150k actually punch through, I need to overcome their armor, so 214,000 points of damage, and then overcoming the 30% resilience, so 306,000 points of damage to get that one shot, one kill to get through to a weak toon. So alright, just for the sake of argument, let's say I want to take out a character who's got some real meat to him, like a paladin or a death knight. So let's say they have 175,000 hit points just to start off with. And if they're average geared, let's say they have about a 45% resilience, and then they're going to have the armor on top of that, so it's about another 60% off the top of that. So in order to overcome all of that and to kill them in one shot, I would need to do 800,000 points of damage in one shot. That's just ridiculous. That's just stupid ridiculous. So I'll tell you guys what. Off the table. We're just going to take that entire concept and trash it. I understand that they're not going to give the player characters a weapon called Fat Boy to walk around with that they can do that much damage in one shot. Given an expansion or two, they just might, but right now they're not going to do that. Now this does not mean that the concept is dead, it just means that it gets a little more interesting. So let's start over from the beginning. WoW hunters are supposed to be Grizzly Adams, but the story has evolved since so-called vanilla WoW, and the game has changed the roles to evolve with them. The overarching story still applies. The whole fucking world is at war. So my argument is to use hunters in the way that they've been used in previous wars in the real world. Modify what they do already, and make it for a military application. To show you what I'm talking about, I need to demonstrate several mechanics that are already in place in the game right now. The hardcore crowd, you guys already know this stuff. This is just to get everybody else up to speed. First of all is the hunter's arsenal of shots. Each specialty shot basically acts like a spell in terms of game mechanics. They cost focus, which is a replenishing pool of points that effectively limits you, as well as having cooldowns, which means that you have to wait X time between individual shots. Hunters also have some utility shots that do bonus damage or act like shotgun shells to hit multiple targets. When you choose your talents, you specialize into other shot types, which can cause more instant damage, or add damage over time benefits, or specialty effects like instant sleep or stun effects. Hunters also have pets that act as extra damage in a PvE environment, and they basically keep the bad thing away from the hunter. The hunter has this bar at the bottom of the screen that tells his pet what to do, and usually that includes 3 reactions for the pet: assist, defensive, or passive. The latter is default when you get on your mount and the pet runs alongside you. Hunters also have camouflage, which makes it difficult to see them. Not impossible, mind you, just difficult. And to kind of shift classes here, druids. When switching from form to form, the bottom bar actually changes. The same goes for many other classes like rogues. The idea being is that when you switch to your new form, the new bar is filled with the abilities that you can only use in that form. But the real key ability, and that's probably the most underused in the hunter's arsenal, is Eagle Eye. When used, it shifts your camera to wherever you can actually see in the world. The downside is it's only usable outdoors. You can't cast it on moving targets, you really can't do anything other than observe with it, and plus you need to have a line of sight to whatever you want to scope out. So if something's in your way, too bad, move. This isn't just a matter of inventory. What I'm doing is I'm proving that what I'm talking about already exists in the game itself. It would have to be repurposed or renamed or tweaked just a little bit, but it's already in there. I'm just saying make it a little more useful. What I'm proposing is a more military-styled hunter talent tree, a survival build that's actually useful, if you will. For all intents and purposes, it'd be the same hunter-based shots and abilities, just different nuts and bolts. The first being an extreme range using the Eagle Eye mechanic. It would allow for long-range shooting using single attacks like Steady Shot. When they go into their long-range shooting position, the bar changes to only allow long-range shooting spells, and at low level, the range could be like double the distance of the minimum shot, so 80 yards. At high level, this would cap to 300 yards, but you'd gain these ranges gradually as you leveled up. Stop typing, let me finish. Every time I start talking about this, people are like, oh, well, what about the checks and balances? That'd be so unfair. Okay, let's go with the checks and balances that are already in the game that people have agreed upon. Eagle Eye only works outdoors, line of sight, and you can't move while you're casting it. That's three pretty powerful things right there. Include, a 2-second animation of you going down into position to get into your shot, and then 2 seconds of you standing up. That's 4 seconds that you cannot defend yourself as you're setting up or getting out of position. That's pretty powerful too. Oh, and while we're at it, let's put your pet on passive so your pet can't just sit there and defend you as you are setting up for your shot. This may not seem like much balance, but in a PvP battleground, nobody stops moving. And I can tell you from practical experience, if you sit still on a battlefield too long, you are going to get flanked and you are going to get taken out. It's that simple. He's gone! On this line of thought, I'd also like to give the sniper camouflage way early in their career, say level 20 or so. But with the same restrictions as the range shot, it only works when not moving. Now, as they progress in levels, give the sniper only a few long-range shots with at least a 5-second shared cooldown. One shot would be your normal steady shot, one damage over time or a healing debuff, one spell interrupt, and one shot that hits for double damage but also has double the shared cooldown. Or simply put, they could only shoot one round every 5 seconds and not send a volley of shots. Effectively, this would mean that they would have to choose their shots with some consideration. This puts the sniper into a support role and not Rambo mode. Do you interrupt the enemy healer, or do you help your teammate getting mauled by the Death Knight? And yes, this will change the way the game is played, but it's no different than what happened to siege engines. I really don't want to get into a full discussion about this right now, but if you played Isle of Conquest or The Strand of the Ancients lately, you've seen exactly what's been going on. It used to be you'd get to the siege engines and you would be a god! Now you get to the siege engine, it's, by God, defend the siege engines! It's because when the game scaled up to level 85, they never bothered to scale up the siege engines with it so one person can take it out by themselves. They've gone from being made out of iron to being made out of paper mache. But the players have adapted to that, and we've changed our strategy accordingly. And I don't see this as being any different than that. Now, as far as this being very a boring style play, I could argue that. But once again, in order to explain this, I need to do a little bit more reality. Let's do this. From a practical aspect, I can tell you that if you're sitting in the back waiting for the action to find you, you're doing it wrong. Well, let's face a reality here. You're in an enclosed space with nowhere to fall back to and, for all intents and purposes, a time constraint. When it all goes sour because you're not helping your guys in the front line and you're hiding in the back, you will be overrun, you will get mauled, and you will get no sympathy from me for that. You need to actually be up with your guys, give them support at the pace they're running at, and sometimes this means taking the reins and making things happen. Couple guys, come with me! And yes, sometimes you're going to be camping a spot, but you better have a damn good reason to do it and lots of support from your teammates. Plus, it's going to require some pretty dynamic thinking from the person playing the sniper. I can tell you, after a week, all of the easy sniper spots will be discovered, and the rogues are going to be watching them. This means that the sniper player will need to be on the ball and find new places to do his thing from. And a lot of times, this is going to take you out of that 300-yard buffer zone and make it a lot closer. From here we could round out the character with other hunter skills so that they can be close in if they need to be, because you're going to find yourself in situations where you're in a building. So rather than be useless, you can just be pretty average instead. This also allows for use of spec in arenas and even PvE instances without being horrifyingly overpowered. I realize that I'm leaving out a whole bunch of little things in this, and that's because I don't feel like spending 45 minutes of your time to go through every single nuance and hold your hand as I'm doing it. I'm assuming you're intelligent people, you guys can fill in some of the gaps for yourselves. But that being said, I can already hear the hardcore crowd, "Oh, this is what you had us waiting for? This is your bulletproof proposal?" No! Fuck no, it's not bulletproof. This is a first, maybe a second draft at best. The whole idea of this video is to ignite debate, get a discussion going, get people talking about it. But I understand it's going to get a lot of resistance from the hardcore gamer crowd because it's different. I may be painting with the broad brush here, but it's been my experience that the hardcore crowd in most every hobby gets locked into a specific way of doing things, and anyone thinking outside of that is shunned at best and viciously attacked at worst. The general attitude is, if you don't like it, quit, or if you don't like it, tough luck, just be grateful to have a game to play and take what they give you. And that just doesn't sit right with me. One of the principles of my life has been, if you see a problem, you should try to create a solution for that problem. And even if your solution isn't the best solution, you may be inspiring somebody else down the road to come up with a superior solution, so you're doing some good for the world. And that's what I'm trying to do with these videos. I'm trying to spark debate and get people talking about things like this. And if your version of debating this is, OMG, you suck, LOL, that's nice, dear. Go have a cookie and run along. The adults are talking now.